All right, welcome to the Erie Music History Podcast. I am Chip Shell, your host. And today, if you were a drummer in Erie over the past number of decades, you've likely encountered my guest today, Pat Ross. He's the owner of Let There Be Drums, and he's been actively playing drums in bands. Well, you know what? You're going to tell us about that.
Yeah, we'll tell you about that.
So
Hi,
Pat,
Dan.
welcome. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you very much.
Pat and I just met, and but I've known of him for many years. Specifically, I know that you were the drummer in Endless Summer. You brought the album with your beautiful girl on the cover.
Oh, yeah.
I've had your co-bandmate Mike Lotson here.
I listened to Mike's podcast
Yeah.
when you had him on.
Yeah, but you gave me a whole bunch of cards and a list of all sorts of bands that I didn't have. So you've been doing this for a while because I saw some pictures of you when you were very young.
Yeah.
In a super cool band named, what was it called? I just saw it on the drumhead.
Oh, Magnum.
Magnum.
Yes. Magnum was the first band I played with.
I love those names.
Yeah, I don't know. We went from Magnum to Razor, so we kept that,
I like Magnum better.
Yeah, me too.
Magnum was the name of a band that played at the Erie County Fieldhouse, or was supposed to and got canceled.
Yeah, and it wasn't us.
Yeah, right. I say that because we
Right.
talked about the Fieldhouse. He's wearing a Crack the Sky shirt, a
Yes.
great band out of Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
But Pat, so let's get into, we're going to talk about Let There Be Drums because that's a big part of who you are, and a lot of
Definitely.
people in town know.
Yeah.
We should have a caveat for this episode too. Pat has a cold. He's got, a little bit of phlegm going on.
Hit me. I get an annual thing. It just happened to be the week that we were scheduled to tape. So
no big deal.
Sorry for being more like Kermit the Frog or any other reptilian in my vocal range.
That's important to say because you're also a singer. You're not just a drummer.
Yeah, exactly.
You're one of those
Right.
guys that does both. You worked in the school district for a while. You went
Yep.
to Fort LaBeouf
Yep.
High School. You studied at Edinburgh.
Yes, I
teaching
did.
Certificate. Now I can't talk.
Oh, it's okay.
But you're one of those drummers. You're like a
thank you.
musician's musician type
Sure.
of guy. Like you're a continual student, it seems like.
Exactly. Yep.
I see you and Big Stan on Facebook,
Yep.
following Stanton Moore and
Yep.
and bringing in these other drummers and stuff. And so, I just want to get that out, at the beginning so people
Sure.
understand you're not one of these guys that like, this is just a pastime. Like
Yeah,
you've focused
it's actually
on
been
this.
a passion for quite a while.
Yeah.
And I think as I was compiling notes and things today to make sure that we had the most complete picture.
Yeah.
I thought about in retrospect all of the things that connected to each other, and passion seems to be the word. I'm passionate about teaching kids, both privately and being a band director in the city of Erie for 17 years.
Okay.
Yeah, 17 years. And then also, working with bands and musicians for, like you said, probably 40 years now.
What was the, let's see, how old were you then in those Magnum pictures?
In the
You
Magnum
look
pictures,
teens.
I'm guessing I was 16 because there's a photograph of the first van I had, which was a Volkswagen bus. And all of the pictures, it was really funny how they've all been inspired by album covers.
Oh.
So the Magnum pictures are based on the fact that Elton John's Yellow Brick Road album came out. And the gentleman who was the lead singer and bass player for Magnum and Encore, Ken Campbell, just was enamored by the way they did that. And inner sleeve, when you get the one that opens, which was the original album, there were all kinds of cool pictures of the guys in the band. So the other one was Pink Floyd's Uma Guma. On the back cover, I think, of the band picture, they're on a highway, and they have all of their equipment set up artistically, like, from the point of the van toward the point of the photographer. So there's a photo with that bus in there at the beginning, my Volkswagen bus, and we had all of the equipment out of it just sort of stacked up. And the idea was, all this fits inside this thing.
Wow. Yeah, I see that. That's a great picture.
Another great
I'll
picture.
include that.
Those were taken on the front lawn of my parents'
Okay.
house in Summit Township, where I fortunately moved from the city of Erie and out of St. Stan's into Fort LaBeouf Middle School, which in 72 had a brand new building. So I was the first seventh grader in that classroom. It just opened all kinds of doors to people that are playing. They had bands, they had choruses.
But you were already playing at this time.
I was already taking lessons at the time.
Yeah, who does the man who teaches so much? So many kids in town probably know you as the drum teacher.
Yeah.
Who did you take lessons from?
Oh, very good question. My uncle Leonard and his best friend. Okay, now I'm having a name.
That's all right.
Fritz.
So your uncle's friend.
Yeah, hang on. Bunny Falkowitz. Bob. Okay. Bob Falkowitz went to prep together. And they were both percussionists in the prep drum section of the time frame that they were there. And they were getting to the point in their performances that they were kind of going ahead of all the teachers in town. So they would take a train on Saturday mornings from Erie to Cleveland, and they would study with a gentleman named Charlie Wilcoxon, who has a whole series of books and things out. And so when it came time for me to take lessons or buy a drum set or do anything, my mom, who was Leonard's sister, said, we're going to talk to the expert. So he contacted Bob, who eventually ended up teaching English and literature at Gannon University, about, are you still teaching privately? And Bob said yes. Funny story about Bob, he always went by the nickname Bunny, so Bunny Falkowitz, and I wasn't quite sure what the deal was on that. He had a very nice placarded plastic Playboy Bunny logo, which has the rabbit in the tuxedo on the front of his bass drum. And come to find out that in very close to the neighborhood where my mom and Uncle Lenny grew up, Bob's father had a bakery. Okay. So that's where the nickname Bunny came from. His job was to break out the buns and package them up into plastic bags or boxes. All right. And that's where that came from. So I started to work with Bob Falkowitz in middle school, right around 72, 73. And because he had gone to Cleveland and studied firsthand with Charles Wilcoxon, he had his book already notated and things checked off in Wilcoxon's handwriting. Got it. And I ended up working out of his technique books and things. Years later, I'm in New Orleans attending a weekend seminar with Stanton Moore, drummer from Galactic and also a solo artist or playing and gigging in the New Orleans area. And Stanton wrote an article for Drum Magazine that explained that all of these things that Wilcoxon had written out during that time frame in the 40s, guys were using on drum set in jazz music.
So you were taught on that basis.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's crazy how it all came around like that.
There's so many of those connectivity points and, synchronicity, to quote the Police, that happened. And so I know that most of it wasn't an accident.
Well, it's funny, you gave me this list here, and you're one of those guys that has played in so many different bands. And, we obviously can't go through every one of them, but I love those early names, Magnum, Razor, 74. I mean, some of the guys that you mentioned, I can mention here for you, Mark Miner, Ken Campbell. Says you were the house band in Razor in 1974 at the French Quarter. So the French
theoretically,
Quarter was there.
Yeah. The gentleman that owned the French Quarters was like, "Hey, I want you guys in at least once a month." So we considered ourselves. I mean, it was never officially stated that we were the house band. But
when did you graduate high school?
I graduated from high school in 1977.
Okay, so in 74, you're a freshman or whatever.
Yeah, it's about right.
And what type of music was Razor playing at the
We were playing cover music at the time, rock radio stuff. I remember one of our biggest achievements at the time was that when we hit 9th grade, we actually got to go back and play a middle school dance for the middle school, and we felt like, woohoo, like we made it, like, where does the Grammy come in now, and again, we always had high hopes. And the band became really important. It didn't cut into homework and schoolwork because Mom and Dad were really good about saying, if you're not working it out in the classroom, guess what?
Yeah, right.
Rehearsals are going to be over. So we kept that.
So Magnum, Razor, you're still in high school. The Deltones. The Deltones?
Yeah, that was kind of a sideline. And it was an accordion player and a saxophone vocalist, and then myself. And there's a picture in the book of that, too. And the idea was play with anybody you can while you're...
While you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I played showers, and I played wedding receptions, and played polka parties. And because I'm Polish, German, and Irish, that kind of falls into place.
All right.
And I used to sit in the band at the bandstand when my Uncle Len would play, and kind of around where his floor tom was, and just watch him for the whole time during a wedding because I had nothing else to do other than eat and get yelled at by my mom. Stop eating so much and go do something. What do you do at a wedding when you're 5 or 6 or 8 or something? So so Dennis said, Pat, the guys are interested in taking you on, and those were always side projects. If I was in Endless Summer at the time. And I don't think I was. I think I was still in the Razor zone at that point. That gave us the opportunity. Like, we didn't play a lot of things. It was like, well, we got this graduation party.
Sure, right.
Or we got this one gig at St. Matthew's in the Woods. So,
so you expanded out, and, eventually you do the Doug Dressler Big Band, which I remember hearing that name, and you played with them numerous years off and on.
Yeah, I did.
And that whole big band thing, like, one thing I noticed about your background is it's very diverse. I have a lot of folks come in here, and it's like, I played in this type of band since I was 17, and we still play that type of stuff. You do the drum and bugle corps, you do big bands, you do Encore, you do all that stuff. Yeah. You even played in a punk band.
Yes, I did. I never did it before, so I thought I would. It's always been, to me, music is music.
Okay.
And each of those different situations present challenges. So it was, hey, I got this phone call. Yeah, Doug Dressler here. Hi, Doug. I hear good things about you, and I hear that you read and you play big band music at school. I'm looking for, a steady drummer. Are you interested?
So you were at Edinburgh at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right.
Definitely.
Okay. And so you're still in college, and that takes us up until the 80s, right? In the early 80s?
Yep.
Did you graduate in what, 80?
I graduated in 82.
82, yeah.
Yep.
So obviously, like I said, I always think of you as the drummer for Endless Summer.
Sure.
And did they start in 84 or?
Good question. I went on the road in the fall of 82.
Okay.
I had taught the Fairview High School marching band.
Oh.
And they were looking for a marching band director only. So it would just only be that contract.
And you were in marching band when you were younger?
Yeah, I marched at Fort LaBeouf from the time I was in 8th grade all the way until I graduated from high school. I marched at drumline, and I played quads, and I think that was it. For Edinburgh, for the 4 years that I went there, it just seemed like, get as much experience in this area as you can.
Well, it seems like you did that. I mean, you were in the Gem City concert band
Correct.
for a long time. Am I correct in saying you helped coordinate those drum and bugle corps? Am I using the right
you're right.
phrase? Is that?
Yeah, I was connected with people that would bring that show to town.
Yeah. The fanfare and all that.
Right, the fanfare, Mike. So we were very supportive. We sold tickets at Let There Be Drums. We were a ticket outlet.
Got it.
I never marched drum corps, but was always excited about that fact. But yeah, I had a lot of marching experience.
All right, so you're at Fairview, but then I'm just going to throw in some of these names from the cards that you gave me. Band Transport. Now, there's guys in this band that I've heard of, and people have mentioned on the podcast: Mike Russo, Lee Valamont, Dave Shantz. Don't remember Dave's or what was the bass player?
There was a bass player, and I can't recall his last name. He was from Pittsburgh, and he played with us.
Transport around for a while?
Yeah, we only did original music, which gave us kind of a limited scope.
Yeah.
But it was an all-original project.
What type of music?
It was close to like Yes, Kansas.
Wow.
Anything in that prog rock area.
And you're singing and playing drums on
in
everything?
that band, I'm just playing drums.
Okay. Who is Mike Russo?
No, Dave Shantz is the lead singer.
Okay,
And
gotcha.
then Mike would sing also lead, and then we would, various guys would do backups. But I was able to kind of get freed up at that point.
Back then, where were the places you could play as an original band?
Well, we played at Smugglers.
Huh.
We played at the Rook Club quite a bit. I think we played at some colleges.
Sherlock's, any of those?
Yeah, I think so, because
colleges,
they were open.
Yeah,
they were open for us to come in and be able to do. And it wasn't really about gigging a lot. It was about writing really good music.
Yeah,
and just being able to do that from an original standpoint. It was great fun.
And that whole, not love, but
right.
You like to do original music that
sure.
follows you, and eventually, obviously, you release the EP with Endless Summer. But even before we get to that, close to when we get to Endless Summer, you told me a story when you first got in. Like, you go on the road, and with Frankie D's success story. You got to see this picture. I'll include it with his. But I mean, this is a crazy looking lounge band that not crazy looking. They're very typical looking. You auditioned in Orange, New Jersey.
Drove all the way to Orange by myself with my red Ford Econoline.
So you jump in the van and you head to New Jersey, and the van's part of the deal. Like, you're a drummer, you're a singer, and you have a van.
That's right. I was the triple threat at that time.
And so, where did Frankie D's success story play?
We traveled the country for a while. We played in Vermont. We played in Wisconsin, actually in Green Bay.
Wow.
We played in Alpena, Michigan.
And like I said, it's a lounge band. There's about 5 guys and a girl.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And so, was it the time?
Yes.
Or
music at the time.
Disco?
Yep. No, we stayed clear of that.
This is in the 80s.
Right.
So,
we played a lot of top 40 stuff
so
from that era. I think
Heart,
I have a set list somewhere.
Probably.
Heart, and, all those different guys.
Yeah.
And
Benatar.
Anything in that era.
Yeah. Got it.
And then we had kind of we'd take a break after the first set, and we'd come back and we'd do the floor show, which included Frankie playing drums and highlighting him singing, and we would do standards and things at that point.
So how was that? I always like to ask guys this. I mean, your parents are like, okay, you're gonna go on the road in this van, and you're living out of hotel rooms. You had a girlfriend back then?
No, there was no girlfriend at that point.
Oh, okay.
So that made it a little easier too.
So, okay, perfect. So
and I just thought,
on the road.
Yeah, this would be a good time to do that. I was 22.
Yeah, for sure.
And I thought, I'm hoping that maybe this somehow leads to a professional playing career. So
how long did you do it?
I believe it was like a year and a half.
Oh, okay.
And the hard part about it was the fact that you traveled. We rehearsed during the daytime. A lot of times we would get to a room where they had our pictures and they had our set lists, and they would say, well, we don't want you to play a lot of funky stuff because we don't want to, bring in a certain clientele. And we're like, well, we were like Earth, Wind, and Fire, Chicago, great trumpet player, great sax player. So I said, geez, if I'm in Erie and I go to Sherlock's, I know exactly what they want me to play.
Right.
And there's no alter this set list for that reason. But I did get to travel in the Midwest.
And it's funny, when guys talk to me about traveling on the show or on the road, you know, and some of those guys are guys you've played with. I see coming up in Britain, you played with Chuck Leone and Scott Campbell. They both independently went on the road in different bands, and they've told those stories, how difficult that is. It's a young man's game, living out of the van, living out of motels, the unexpected nature of the venues. Like you said, you may show up and they want you to play this. Or
it was really kind of embarrassing having one of the best trumpet players and sax players. Both of them were graduates from Cincinnati Conservatory of Music, and they're playing cowbell and tambourine because we're doing Hungry Like the Wolf, and we're not allowed to play the Chicago or the Kool and the Gang and stuff, where we had all the horn parts worked out and everything. You get a real lesson that way, I
bet. So what leads you to come back to Erie?
The band kind of morphed into some other musicians, and then it kind of ran its course.
Oh, okay.
The idea behind the horn section was that they had left town from Cincinnati to go on the road and hopefully, make some money that they could put away, and then come up with a recording situation, and that's what they were hoping for.
Yeah.
Well, when that didn't go in that direction, after a while, everybody said, I think it's time to go back home.
Yeah.
We played at some really great places. We played in Detroit, Michigan. Got to run into Frankie Valli in the hallway because they were playing at some place called the Star Club, I think, or something.
Okay.
And we all stayed in the same hotel. Dionne Warwick in the front lobby holding on to her poodle and checking her room things. So it was really kind of cool to run into people like that.
Yeah, like over the years, I know, and this will be a question that we can cover later, but I mean, you've played so many venues where there are a main act and maybe like an Erie Days type of thing.
Yeah.
You get to meet those people. But more importantly, when you owned Let There Be Drums, you bring in people for signings.
Exactly.
So we'll get into some of that.
Sure.
But again, we're pre-Let There Be Drums. You joined Briton for a little while in '84 that Scott and Chuck were
Yeah.
in.
I came off the road. It was probably spring. About March or April, when the Frankie D project decided that they were all going to head home.
Yeah,
it just wasn't kind of panning out for them, and I was good with it. I thought, boy, I learned a lot about this situation. I get home, and the same week I'm home, back living with mom and dad, I get a phone call from Dave Shantz, who I worked with in transport, and he said, well, I'm in this band called Briton, and we do top 40, but we do more of it in like Genesis.
Some complicated stuff.
Tons of things, but but we're in that genre. Yeah. But they were actually on the radio. And our drummer, Mike Lurdy, is leaving the band, and we wanted to audition you and stuff. And I said, sure. I mean, it was a nice opportunity. Again, these things either find you or you find them.
Right.
And I was really amazed. Like, I'm home 1 week.
Oh, that's all it was.
And I'm home 1 week from the road trying to figure out, okay, what's going to happen next?
All right.
And Briton happens.
So let's talk about one of those weird things that's happened to you, just coincidental things, or how they evolve. So I've mentioned Let There Be Drums a number of times. If you're a drummer in town, like I said, you probably know Pat from going to the store. I mean,
probably.
I've never had anybody on the podcast that owned a music store.
Oh, yeah.
And so Let There Be Drums opens in October of '83. You're on Peach Street, right by St. George's.
Yeah.
But you alluded to how it evolved or how it even came to be. Like your dad talked to you?
There seems to be kind of a progression in that passion area that we talked about earlier, doing things and doing them well. And for a number of years, especially when I got back, because one of the things I would do on the road would be find the drum shop or find the music store and, check it out and see what's going on. What do they carry? Pick up a few things that maybe I need. I'm a gearhead.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I gotcha.
So Markham's Music is the only full-service music store. World of Music, I think, was in its infancy. And yes, you're right, Ozeki Brothers Music.
Yeah, but there wasn't just a drum shop, right?
No, the only drum shop in town was Dal Drum Studio.
Yeah, right, I remember
and it was off of 6th Street.
Yeah.
And at the time that I came back from the road, the Matzaks were running it. Okay. But it almost seemed like you had to get an appointment in order to figure out, when they were there so you could come and buy things.
Got it.
It wasn't something that they were running every day full time.
Sure.
But they did teach lessons, and I taught lessons there.
Okay.
And I also taught lessons at Markham's Music, too. So it all revolved around the idea of me trying to find a set of pinstripe drum heads to put on my tom-toms. They're in the Modern Drummer magazine, and they're, apparently the newest thing that Remo came out with.
And that's how you found out about
And nobody had them.
Yeah, you looked in magazines back then.
Sure, right.
There was no internet. Yeah, right.
No, this is all pre-internet.
Yeah.
Just, I started to discover that other drummers were as frustrated as I was. So, you almost get to the point where you say, well, if nobody else is going to do this, I am.
Yeah, right.
I really think this, and again, it wasn't like, I want to make $1 billion being a drum store operator. It was like, I really want to help guys and myself who have been trying to find things that are coming out that the older stores just, because they were affiliated with only one drum brand or because they were a part-time kind of a situation, didn't have a lot of inventory. So
is that location still there, or was it tore down?
which location?
The first one, the 5158.
Good question.
I don't know if there's anything there now. Or not.
Well, there was this house that actually was a dental office in the back, and we moved into that first.
Okay, all right.
And then we moved into the main plaza.
Oh, okay.
And we're there for a while.
Right.
Which,
before you moved to the Raven Building.
Right, which was directly across from St. George's School.
Yeah. Okay.
And then we moved to the corner of Peach and Washington.
All right.
And I rented a house from Lou Perico. For some reason, he owned this property there. And it was, right across the street from the country fair on the corner.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Right
and
by
that one got torn down.
Okay. So you are the owner-operator of a business now. You're 3 years, 4 years out of college, if that. You've been on the road for a little bit. So you're a young business owner. How was that?
I was 23 years old.
Living with your parents still, probably?
No, actually, I got an apartment close to Gannon College because my fiance at that time was Kathy Conzit, who I met in Dubuque, Iowa. So I'm running the store.
That's where you're living.
The band is Briton at the time. We're rehearsing in my store at night after we close.
Gotcha.
Sometimes we're also rehearsing in Chuck Leone's house, and we're able to keep all those balls in the air.
Yeah.
And kind of go from there.
That's a lot. So you're at Let There Be Drums, and you're living downtown in Gannon, and you're in Britain for a little while, but we're coming up on the evolution of Endless Summer. So how does that evolve?
There's another connection.
Okay,
Are you ready? Here's the next connectivity. So I'm teaching drum lessons, and I start teaching a student named Jeff Martin, and Jeff's mom, Chris, and my wife, Kathy, who worked with me, hit it off. And one, day that Jeff comes for a lesson, Chris says, my husband, Tom, plays in Endless Summer. The band was already established.
Oh, it was? Oh, I didn't know that.
Right. There was a gentleman playing drums.
So you have Jim Boroway.
Jim Boroway.
He's in the band, and Lots is in the band
No,
already?
this is pre-Lots. We have Tom Martin on keyboards and bass guitar.
Oh, okay.
Then we have Jack Sidman on rhythm guitar and vocals.
R.I.P.
Right.
Jack, right?
And R.I.P. for Jack. Yeah, we lost him.
Yeah.
And we lost Tom Martin too.
Oh, had they been playing a while?
They had been.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah. So I was invited because Chris was there to drop Jeff off for a drum lesson and said, she brought a cassette because that was the situation.
Yeah, right, back then.
They had a cassette and played some original music and said that the band basically does Beatles, Beach Boys, Stones, all from kind of that 60s era. And would I like to audition? And I said, sure.
Yeah.
So, and the purpose for the replacement that I was told about was that Tom doesn't sing, only Jack and Jim sang, and that the drummer really didn't sing.
Okay.
And they were looking for somebody that could help them pull off the 3-part harmony so that we could do Beach Boys and the Beatle tunes and stuff.
Yeah.
And so, lo and behold, I get the gig. There was some tension because Jack Sidman wasn't really on board, I guess, with the switch, but Jim Boroway said it was really important that we have that. They liked the way the vocals blended.
Yeah.
And I become a member of the band. I study with the drummer that's already playing. I see them a couple times. And he was going to finish out by New Year's Eve of that year, which I thought was great.
Where were they playing at that time?
Good question. I think they were playing a lot of different weddings. So playing at various hotel places. I know they played the Brown Derby, like a 4-day gig in the Mill Creek Mall.
Right. Yeah, I don't envision them as a typical bar band like playing
but things were opening up for us. We also played it in Harbor Creek. The Fairfield Club was kind of like our mainstay,
which just reopened.
Yeah, exactly. And a couple of Holiday Inns and things all in the Erie area.
And weddings, that's one thing I don't hear a lot of guys talk about.
I think because
that's very lucrative.
It was very lucrative.
Right.
And a lot of times we got paid and we got to eat.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
We put on our tuxedos or whatever. in order to do that. They were lucrative.
Yeah. So you're all set now. You're in the band.
Yeah.
Still running the store, and Endless Summer becomes really one of the most popular bands in town at that time. I mean, there was Friction, obviously, different type of music.
Yeah.
There were lots of bands. I don't mean to just lump.
No, that's right.
But Endless Summer was a well-recognized name.
We were working with an agent named Elliot Stroll, and Mike Lotz actually worked under or with Elliot in partnership. So fairs,
I was going to say
different kinds of outdoor events. We played at the zoo,
right?
Outdoors, and we just wanted to gig, and we had fun, and people liked us. We played yacht clubs.
Was that the busiest you were into that point?
I would say probably.
I mean, you went on the road
in the Erie, Pennsylvania.
But in Erie,
it was every weekend.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes we would do a Friday night at the Fairfield, pull all the equipment that we need, and do a Saturday afternoon wedding, and then Saturday night back at the Fairfield
Got
again.
it. Okay.
So I can't imagine even thinking about doing that now. But when you're 20 years old and everything functions great, and you don't have any stiffness or knee replacement stuff coming up.
Tell me about this. Tell me about the EP here, because I have one of these.
Good.
And a lot of people in town have this. So I'm looking at what people refer to as an album, but this is a 6. I called it an EP.
Right.
But, I mean, it's a 6-song
It's kind of like an
album.
EP. We wanted to put something out together. It's always been our dream to be on a recording.
Yeah.
So we got together with Keith.
Right, Keith
Vasheko.
Right.
And his
partner, John.
Yeah.
Right, Mazza.
Right. And Keith was not yet moved into the studio on the second floor of Raven.
Right. He was
so
still in
we were
29th
basically
Street.
playing in his living room.
Right.
And the mixing deck was in his dining room.
Right.
And Jim Borway wrote music and wanted to make sure that, we had all original tunes. And by that time, we had 6.
And so why are there only 3 musicians listed, but there's a 4th guy in the picture?
Because we had started what I like to refer to as the revolving rhythm guitar vocalist era.
Okay, all right. Who is this guy in the picture?
That would be John Kroc.
Okay, all right. I don't know him.
Yeah.
All right.
John came in. He was one of many, and I have them photographed for you to take a look at some point. Jack Sidman moved to Colorado. Apparently because he had been a ski instructor at Peak and Peak and decided that he would like to do it on a more professional, full-time basis.
Okay.
And so he left, and we went through a revolving door. Like I said, John Kroc was the first one. Paul Fortin came into the band at that time.
Right.
We worked with a couple other guitar players that were, looking to play with the band.
Do you get people that still say, "Hey, I have that album"?
Yes,
I have that. Do you do any of these songs in Encore? Because you play in Encore now.
No, we didn't carry them into it.
No.
We just decided to let it stand the way it stood.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for us, albums, the week that they were delivered, and Mike and Elliot drove all the way to Cincinnati to pick them up from the pressing plant.
Yeah.
When we got to the gig and started selling them, people were saying, "Oh, that's great. Do you have it on cassette?"
Oh, I was going to say, do they have it on CD? I thought you were going to ask
CD
me that. Yeah.
a little bit later.
Yeah, right.
So I would take it upon myself. I'd say, if you buy a copy of the album, we'll autograph it, and I will record it onto cassette for you at no extra charge.
Do that.
Right.
And does everybody ask about the girl?
Yeah. I asked about the girl when we got to the photo studio. Very wonderful young lady.
So if you don't know, the cover of it says Endless Summer. It has this really pretty girl standing on the beach at Prescow in a pink bikini. It says Ride the Music. She's, leaning against a surfboard. I mean, I've had lots of people, comment about the girl. Very attractive girl.
She's very attractive.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
We got to the photo shop before we went out to the beach, and the young lady was standing there, and I asked her, "Hi, are you one of the photographers?" And she said, "No, I'm the model." And what took me right away was, I'm only 5'9", and she was shorter than I was.
Yeah, right.
And I was like, okay, I had a different idea in my mind's eye. of what
The cover was
the cover, what the girl would look like.
But you knew a girl was going to be on the cover.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Because you guys are on the back with a...
Right. Elliot Stroll, again, our manager at the time, had girls that were modeling that he could use for things like car shows and stuff.
Got it. Okay.
Handing out brochures or just kind of being eye candy for somebody.
Yeah.
And when you look at the photograph, we weren't that crazy about the front cover. Oh. And it was nothing to do with the young lady. But...
You remember?
I don't know if she was credited on the back of the album. I thought
it says Colleen. Thanks to Colleen, Kathy, Janet, Chris, Patty, Barb, the Raven Crew, TRS, Progressive Talent, Photogenesis, Kevin, John Kroc.
Maybe not. No, I don't. I remember running into her at one time at Kmart.
Oh, really?
And she's the one on 26 before it closed, and she said,
"Hey, Dad."
Yeah, she said, "Do you know who I am?" And I'm like, "No, but you look familiar." She said, you play with Endless Summer, right? And I said, yeah. She said, I was the girl on the front cover.
That's funny.
Now, here's another funny story. We turned the pictures into Kevin Bensink, and Kevin said, I'll do the retouch and lay out the album design for you. And in the back of the picture, you'll notice that there's a group of trees and what looks like a low-flying cloud.
Indeed there is,
yes.
Yeah.
Kevin told me later when I met him years after.
Kevin, if you don't know, Antoine Jack from the Blues Beaters. Right. Yeah, great bass player.
He said to me, there was a dumpster, a big green dumpster in the background of the photo.
So very basic Photoshop
and
why
Photogenesis never figured it out. So he basically said, I did the best I could by just whiting it out, sort of.
Got it.
And then he retouched the sand, and there was a log here in the front that was further back, and he was able to cut it and pull it a little bit more forward to balance the picture.
He did a great job.
He sure did.
You don't notice that stuff at all. What happened to Jim Borway?
Jim is still here in Erie.
Is he? Okay.
The band had a falling out with Jim. I think just differences in music and
you don't have to explain bands.
It happens, right? Yeah. And really,
everybody that's been on here has been through one of these.
The reason why, some of might think, well, God, he's been in so many bands. Maybe he's not, one to stick around or to dedicate himself to a project, which is completely false. It was a matter of working with people. And
so it just kind of dissipated.
It just kind of went kaplooey.
Everybody left. It just stopped. Or did Jim leave on his own?
No, Jim left. We kind of had a big argument, and we told him about things that we thought needed to change, and he wasn't willing to do that. So we dropped the Endless Summer and became Encore.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And that's when Jim Froman enters the band in the guitar place. So we've now got... And Mike Lotz, by that time, had also made the transition. He did play keyboards, and he was in the band at the time the recording came out.
Yeah, right.
Tom Martin had stepped out, and I think he had something else going on, or he just needed a break.
Okay.
And that's understandable.
Sure.
There were a lot of years that we were together.
I mean, Endless Summer was together 84, at least with you.
Right.
Till 91 or so.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And, you mentioned earlier to me play in multiple bands sometimes. You've got side projects and things like that.
People will contact me. How busy are you? We play once every couple of months. Okay.
Right.
And that seemed to be the next situation that there wasn't enough work in Erie for a band to keep every weekend going because a lot of clubs were cutting back and saying, well, we're just going to have a band on Friday.
Yeah, exactly.
And Saturday we're going to do karaoke, or we're going to use a DJ, or they can just play the jukebox. So you went from 8 possible gig nights in a month to this particular club down to 4.
Yeah, right.
And hundreds of bands wanted to play. So that was kind of like, oh boy.
And that change in bands to DJs obviously affected the amount of playing, but that was very indicative of the 80s and that time period, But you went through a lot of changes during that time too. Your store moves 2 or 3 times. You eventually end up in 93 in the Raven building.
That's right. Yeah.
about, you've been in a number of different bands with the little side projects.
Yeah.
Talk to me about some of these, like real quick, like Red Alert.
Okay. There was a switch over when Dave Shantz left Briton, and again, it was just one of those things where people were like, "Hey, I really like playing with you guys, but kids are a factor. I want to go see my daughter play soccer."
Because we're at that point too. You're
exactly
getting into families.
Yeah, I have a family. Right. My son Ian was born in '91.
Okay.
So Anna Zaharsky and her husband Chuck were good friends of mine, and they had been doing some band things, and we basically kept the same setup with Chuck Leone on keyboards, Scott Campbell on guitar, Steve Nick on the bass, and me on drums, and we ended up having Anna as our lead singer.
Oh, okay.
So we were able to do a lot more material with a female voice.
So that it just morphed into
that.
So
right.
Briton became Red Alert.
Briton became Red Alert, just like Razor or Magnum became Razor, and Endless Summer became Encore.
Okay.
And it seems to be you either go new or you just reinvent yourself.
Right. So I always say, the podcast ends at 1990, but we're already into the 90s, and you're still playing today in Encore. You play in, who else do you play with?
Right now, I'm in a band that gets together on Thursday nights, and we write original material. We don't have a name. We call it The Project.
Who's in that?
John Sutton sings with us, and Carl with the long Polish name, who used to be in Easy and stuff. Right. Carl is our guitar player. We're currently looking for a bass player.
Okay.
And mainly what we want to do is, write a whole show's worth of material.
Okay.
And then eventually record it and go out and play. But it's not, anything is happening. Right now, I play pickup gigs with a couple of different bands that are in that kind of that three-piece genre.
Is Let There Be Drums, what happens?
Okay, so Let There Be Drums gets to a point where we're in the Raven building.
Yeah. And
my wife calls on the schools, because we did a lot of repair work for City of Erie and county schools, and said, we know that Bob Rudolph is retiring as the instrumental teacher at Roosevelt Middle School off of Cranberry. And we that was the year that UPS went on strike.
Okay.
So there was a 20-day strike with UPS, and we couldn't get product in. And we wrote it out. Some companies who had already established working with FedEx were able to ship that way, but FedEx made it very clear that they weren't going to take on the entire countries.
Yeah, right.
Because it would just crush them. So that ends, and I call on Kathy to, take a look at, if we can get into the building.
Yeah, right.
And be able to do the repairs. We did all the evaluations in like April and May. And then I would work up a quote and send it in, and the director would have to get a purchase order. And she said, we know that Bob Rudolph has retired. Can you tell us the name of the new band director? And the girl said, I'd like to, but we don't have one. Why do you know somebody?
Oh, perfect.
And
there's another one of those situations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
My husband has his Bachelor of Science degree in instrumental music ed as a percussionist.
Right.
When he comes to do the repairs, would you please have him stop at the principal's office so we can connect and get kind of a background of an idea of, whether he would be good in that position.
Yeah.
Apparently what happened was someone who had been subbing had said yes to the position when it opened back in July 1st would be the beginning of the new, year, school year under the way that they do things. And in the course of time waiting for July, August, and September to come up, he had gotten offered an opportunity for a master's scholarship program, and which would allow him to work with other musicians and get paid a stipend while he was going to school.
Okay.
So that's where the connection now comes in for me being hired at Roosevelt Middle School to do band, chorus, to work with the beginning strings, and eventually I started a jazz band program there too. So be careful what you pray for,
Yeah, right.
and be careful what you wish for, because it just might happen.
Well, we're running out of time, but
Sure.
I want to blow through some of these names of the bands just so people
Yeah.
know that you've played in, and then
Yeah.
I have a few follow-up end questions
Sure.
for you. So Pink Cadillac, you play with Ray Reed and all those guys. George Jordan, great guitar player.
Yeah,
Lake
excellent.
Effect, you play with the Tom Snook.
The
Debbie
Tom,
O's in the
yeah.
band. Denny Fabrizi, Bruce Bliley, fantastic bass player.
Excellent, yep.
Paul Gorman and the Gypsy Poets, you play with
Yeah.
them.
Yeah,
Unordained, you play with Patty Williams and Bernie White.
Yes, yes.
You know, you still play in Encore. So talk to me about those counters with different famous people. that
Yeah,
you've had.
sure.
So some of your favorite ones.
The first famous person, we had an opportunity to bring Mark Drubay in. Mark was the drummer for Survivor.
Okay, all right, yeah.
So he, from the Chicago area, and we held a drum clinic at the Siebenberger Club because my parents were members there.
Okay, yeah.
And Mark came in, did a great job. Eye of the Tiger had already been on the charts.
Okay,
so he was in a good position. We introduced the Gretsch Drumline product to our store, Let There Be Drums, and usually with, some kind of an event or fanfare, rather than just saying, as of last Friday, we became a Gretsch dealer.
So you brought him in as the...
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
So Mark was the first one that we had, and we were playing the Fairfield Club the night of his clinic, which was a Saturday.
Okay.
So I have a couple photographs in there of Mark sitting in
cool.
with Endless Summer and playing.
Cool.
I had purchased a 1932 Ludwig snare drum from an elderly gentleman who him and his wife were selling their house and moving into a retirement complex.
Yeah.
And I made it functional to be able to have snares on it and work. And Mark offered me $500 that night for the snare. And I said, Mark, I've only had a chance to play it like this week.
Yeah.
And I really don't want to, to give that up. But I appreciated that. Met Tristan Bowden, who was the drummer for Kenny Loggins when they played in Erie.
Okay. And
he is now the drummer for Chicago.
And one of your favorite or famous students, Chris Vrenna.
Chris Vrenna.
Right.
Yeah, Chris ordered things for me at the store. We played together in the Savelli Concert Band for some summers. And Chris was just a good friend.
A teacher now himself.
Yes, teaching at a college. And he had been, playing in bands like the Exotic Birds. And
that's right.
he would go on the road. Trying to think, it's something Puppy.
Right.
And then that grew into his connection to Trent Reznor. Thank you.
Yeah.
So he goes on the road. His father loved the store and would come in and give us the updates. Well, Chris is here and he's doing this, and he'll be, the band's going to be on Letterman, and he'll be playing, this concert thing or whatever.
Right.
We kept close in as far as we could.
Probably the most famous drummer that came out of Erie.
Yeah. The guy that ended up with working with Frank Zappa and Dweezil, Joey Travers.
Joey Travers, yeah.
So Joey Travers.
Both guys I've interviewed and written articles about.
Joey Travers is another friend of mine.
Sure.
I didn't teach Joey per se, but he did come to see me and asked me to help him, hone up all of his rudimental stuff because he wanted to do that for his audition at Berklee College of Music in Boston.
Right. Yeah.
And he always told me, I said, what do you hope to do? He said, I want to meet Frank Zappa.
Right.
And I want to, play in his band. And I said, wow, another dedication and passionate situation. Apparently, Joe took some time in college at Berklee to transcribe the Black Page drum solo.
Right.
And that ended up in an envelope sent to the management company of Frank Zappa. And Frank was blown away and said, anytime you're in California, look me up. And so
Joey met Dweezil, and I should have said that. Obviously Chris played in Nine Inch Nails,
right?
But Joey has played in lots of other bands.
Oh,
as far as
in fact, the very first time
musician.
Joey had contacted us to say, hey, I'm doing something. He was on Letterman playing for Duran Duran.
Yeah, right. He's played with Duran Duran.
And then Joe's been, he's actually like the vault master.
That is
of
his title.
All, yes,
right.
all of that. And I remember him calling me one time and saying, Pat, you're never going to guess where I am. And I'm like, I don't know, Joe, where are you? He said, I'm at Frank Zappa's house having Thanksgiving dinner with him.
Wow.
And it was just so cool to see Joe as a high school kid with all of the gumption and all of that passion and, stating at that time, I'm going to meet Frank Zappa and be part of his organization. And then to have him call me and tell me that.
That's super cool.
And just, to say, wow, dreams come true. And, and then he's with Dweezil.
Right.
And I've got a videotape of, Dweezil, Zappa does Zappa.
Right. That's what he played for years.
Yeah.
All right. So go back to you for a minute. Last question.
Sure.
Weirdest gig ever.
Oh, weirdest gig ever.
Something happened, place, something.
Oh, that's a good question.
Give me
okay, weirdest gig ever. The hotel that sits next to Splash Lagoon is open. Construction is still going on. And Endless Summer gets hired to play. And there's a gazebo by the pool set up. And it looks like you could fit one guy with a mic stand and an acoustic guitar.
In the gazebo.
And maybe with a monitor.
Yeah.
And the Scott family was there.
They owned it. They had just opened it.
And
the Comfort Inn was called.
Right. I think the Splash Lagoon was under construction, but we knew it was coming. And it was just the most bizarre situation when we tried to explain to the people that the drum set will be in the gazebo.
Yeah, right.
And the rest of us, of the band, Endless Summer, would have to be down, where we need to be.
Right.
So that was the first awkward thing.
And you did it.
We did it. We pulled it off. Yeah, we got them convinced that there was no way 4 guys.
This was like a welcome reception, like a grand opening type of situation.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Out of the blue, in the middle of the festivities, there's a window that slides open on the ground floor of the hotel, and a gentleman who must have been a drywall person or something, had been in construction working there, runs, comes out the window screaming and runs across the grass and the sidewalk and dives into the pool. And
in the middle of you guys
in the middle of us playing. And it was just like, what else is going to happen? You know?
That's a memorable
I don't know.
gig.
It was just one of these oops, wrong planet situations, So,
all right. Well, that's a good one. I don't know. I always like to ask those different questions.
There's always one. I mean, there were some
other.
others that were kind of crazy, but for the most part, that was the one I remember the most.
Well, that's good. Then let's wrap it up there. We've covered a lot of ground.
We did.
There's a lot of students out there who probably want to say thank you to you and you to them.
I would love to hear from them. I hear from my Roosevelt students. I hear from my drum students. I have a whole folder full of the sign-in sheet that you would have signed in to take lessons with me, so I would know how old you were, if you were right-handed or left-handed, etc. I'm still teaching at home. And on Wayne Street.
So you're not retired.
I am not. No, I'm retired, but I'm retired, as I like to say, from edumacation.
There you go.
Yes,
Got it.
As my great mentor, Mr. Simpson, would say.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Dan.
I appreciate it. This was a great trip.
I want to reassure everybody that I don't sound like this on a regular basis.
Yeah, see them in a few weeks with Encore. They sound great.
Exactly. Yeah. So I teach on Zoom and I teach in person. And I just want to let everybody know, if you're an adult or an up-and-coming young person who is of any school age and you would like to do drum lessons, that is one of the main passions that comes out of all of this stuff, and that I really want to continue to help the young people who are looking for somebody to work with. And again, at my studio or at your home on the computer. Let there be drums.
Cool. Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of the Erie Music History Podcast. I want to say thanks to the JPT Foundation. They have been a financial supporter of the podcast since the beginning, and they also give us a free space to have our monthly music night on the first Tuesday of the month. It always features our great house band, the Fabulous Leftovers, as well as a lot of other local bands and musicians. But it's a lot of fun. First Tuesday of the month, totally free. Any donations go to the Second Harvest Food Bank. It is BYOB. There's a great pizza shop next door, Pasalinquas. Check that out the first Tuesday of the month. Also, make sure that you check out Jack Stevenson's Two-Man Happy Hour podcast. Basically tells you where people are playing today, where and when, and you can check that out at the number 2manhappyhour.com. All right, that's all I got for you. Thanks again for listening.